This is the Veteran Woman Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to empowering, inspiring, and encouraging veteran women to overcome their struggles and celebrate their successes. Now, here's your host, the one and only Ariel Renaud.
Welcome, everyone. I am Ariel, your host of the Veteran Woman Podcast, and this is another episode. On today's episode, this is very interesting. We have the empowered whistleblower. I don't know if she goes by that, but I love that title. It's the title of one of her books. So I'm calling her the empowered whistleblower. And she has a lot to tell us. Very, very interesting. She's over here laughing at me. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to Dawn Westmoreland, who is a female veteran. And she's retired Airforce, and she's been an HR consultant for over 27 years. She's also a popular speaker, author, and coach. Welcome, Dawn.
I'm here, and I'm glad to be here, Ariel. Thank you.
I know I didn't do all of your bio because I know we have so much to talk about. So let's start with why the term whistleblower.
Well, there's some people out there that feel the term whistleblower is bad, like you're a tattletale. But, I like it. There was a lady named Lisa Suhay, who's a correspondent with Christian Science Monitor. And she wrote an article on me as if she was educating her son, who was about 10 years old at the time, about sometimes it's the right thing to do is to report things that are wrong or illegal. So, whistleblower is starting to come around. It used to be such an awful word, but now people are seeing the need to speak up and speak out to help people, protect people, report things that are wrong.
So in what did you report? Can you tell us about that story?
Well, yeah, sure. About 4 years ago, I was working in the Veteran Affairs, and one of the first things I noticed, with my background in human resources is nepotism. And, that's just not a common word. It's hiring of family and friends by management. So I started noticing that out of 550 people, that there were only 5 Black people working in the VA agency I worked in. And about a third of the place was family and friends. So that was probably, one of the biggest things that I noticed. And then training, when you're in the government, you cannot give one coworker training and not offer it to the other coworker because that can give that person an edge for promotion. So I saw a lot of that. And so, I spoke up, reached out to the Office Special Counsel in D.C., in Washington, D.C., and they didn't really do anything, even though I provided guidance. And later I found out that, they haven't been very effective in helping people. So because I'm a disabled veteran, I'm 80% disabled, even though I don't look at all like I'm 80% disabled. Yeah, I needed some medical reasonable accommodations, and my management got really mad. They got really mad, and they denied it. So I ended up putting in a disability discrimination, and then with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they were the ones that were the most responsive. So I learned everything about the EEOC, and then there were 14 severe charges of retaliation, harassment toward me. So I got received one of the quickest hearing dates probably in many, many years, because the average person is waiting 4 or 5 years to get a hearing date with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and I received mine within 1 year.
Why do you think you received yours so quickly?
Well, they triage it based off severity. Just some of the things that happened is that I was put on 100 and something days of administrative leave with false charges. And I also knew that somebody was tampering with my cell phone, because I would try to call a couple different people, and I'd have to call, and it would take 6 times before I could get through to them. I had to call, hang up, call, hang up, call, hang up. And funny thing is, after I settled in March, exactly 3 years ago, this month, that problem went away the very next day after I settled. So I was dealing with stalking, denial of, American Disability Acts, medical reasonable accommodations, and lots of false charges to try to fire me. They actually tried to fire me.
Wow. So how did you get the courage to actually speak up?
Well, it's kind of funny. I always jokingly tell people that I'm an extroverted introvert. I'm not necessarily an extrovert, but, I've always heard Oprah's an introvert too. And, you can leave your comfort zone. And so, every time I get tested on the Briggs-Myers personality test, I always have the same personality type, which is INFJ, introvert, intuition, feeling, judgment. And it's the rarest personality types out there. It's less than 1% of the world has that personality type. So, I've always been humanitarian. I grew up, in a rural area in North Florida. And, it was a half black, half white community, and we all pretty much got along. And I grew up treating people with respect. The garbage men would come hang out with us. We were the last stop. Just nobody acted like they were better than anyone else. And I just don't ever remember fighting or any major problems. So speaking up was not hard for me because, I'd been an Airforce first sergeant, an acting one, and I've always had these leadership skills that I learned 20 years in the Air Force. And now I've been retired 13 years. So with those leadership skills and speaking up, speaking out, I saw there was a lot of wrongdoing, and a lot of people were coming to me and they were saying, "Isn't this illegal, Dawn? You've worked in HR." And I'm like, "Yes, it is illegal." And I was the one that moved forward. And as soon as I moved forward and reported all these things, that's when management tried to make my life living hell.
So and I know that is one of the things that people are afraid of, is that retaliation or people making their lives a living hell when they do, or if they do speak up. So how did you deal with any backlash or even people outside who are looking in? Because did you ever get anybody saying, "Oh, you're overreacting," or "Oh, you're making this up," or "Oh, you're just paranoid"? Did you ever get anything like that?
Basically from the management, not from the other people. I mean, everybody shunned me at work because they were afraid of retaliation. They were afraid of being fired, and they knew what was going on in this Veteran Affairs agency. They realized it was a family-friend thing, and they were very scared to speak up and out. But once in a while, when nobody was around, somebody would, give me a high five and say, "Keep going, keep going. We love what you're doing." But I did get beaten up. I mean, I dealt with harassment for over 2 years. Pretty bad harassment.
So did you ever want to give up?
Yeah, nobody has ever asked me that out of 50 interviews. I didn't want to give up, but I really got broken down and tired because after 2 years of the harassment and the things to make me miserable at work, we worked on computers and I had 2 computer screens. Everything I did was on my computer. And I'm 5'10", I'm not a little girl. So they would move the monitors, which were fixed on pipes, and you couldn't adjust it. They were only like 12 inches from the end of my table, so I wasn't even in an ergonomic environment. And then I was working nearly 8 hours a day on the computer and then going home in lots of pain. So I was seeing the doctor a lot, for physical pain and then the mental pain. And so, no, I didn't want to give up. I actually become obsessed, and I actually started working 12, 14-hour days. I mean, I did my work at work, and then I came home, and then I handled entirely my 2 whole cases of disability discrimination and then the retaliation case. And that's what amazes people today. But, I learned it as I went. I have a background in HR. And I know how to read regulations, and I'm a nerd. I mean, I have 4 degrees, and I love school. Thank you, Air Force, for all my college. And so I was obsessed with holding them accountable. And then I saw other good people that were being mistreated and violated, but most of them would not carry through. I helped 2 people start Equal Employment Opportunity Commission cases. One of them gave up like 2 days later because somebody gave him a dirty look. And it was hard to believe because, dirty looks, that would be a good day for me just to get a dirty look. Wow. I mean, I got it the worst. They knew that they were going to get in trouble and they were trying to get rid of me and break me. And I was determined they were not going to break me.
Wow. And thank you for stepping up and for speaking out and persevering through that whole process. And thank you for what you're doing now, helping other people through that process. Because I know it is so hard to talk out and speak out, especially when it will affect your livelihood as far as a career, your job. And I mean, you were going against the government agency.
Yeah, and I knew the phone tapping wasn't something local. I knew that come from above. And, I'm in the mountains in Asheville, North Carolina. So I went to the police and the sheriff's office and our local FBI, and they didn't have the tools. They didn't have the tools to see, that my phone was being tapped. But, I was trying to reach a family member. And then the second person also was a government whistleblower who ironically is my best friend today. And she filed at the same time as I filed. And generally, you're not supposed to know that another person has filed an EEO claim. But what happened is the Veteran Affairs Office Resolution Management, which is the first step in the VA to claim EEO issues, and complaints. They actually sent her form to me with her name on it. And so, that's how I knew that she had filed an EEO, and we'd become good friends. But she had left the place and retired early. And so anytime I would call her, I'd have to call, 6 whole times. I could hear her say, hello, hello, and they recognized the number. But, 6 times to get through. And that's something somebody local can't do. So that came from above.
Wow. So I'm just over here like, wow, that really happens. Part of me is like, okay, are you a conspiracy theorist or... like, wow, that really happens. Like, how do you know that is actually what was going on and it wasn't just a fluke?
Well, I had Verizon as my phone service. And I contacted one of the guys in Verizon, one of the technicians, and he said, there's something very wrong with your account. And he said, give me a few days. And I called him back, and the guy he was shaking on the phone. And I'm like, yeah, there's something going on. And I happen to know, that people do that. Other government whistleblowers have reached out, for help with me, or other, people who've worked and being harassed or bullied reached out to me, for HR consulting. And they also felt that their phone was being tapped for different reasons. But, like I say, it's weird. Do I have the actual proof? No, I don't have the proof. But I just know that when I settled the first week in March 3 years ago, that very next day, I could call through and I could get a hold of my friend and get a hold of one of my family members. So, yeah, and, I could hear machinery on the, I could hear, my phone was different. I could hear some kind of background machinery. A couple months before my hearing, I had some guy call me up and the hairs on my arms started rising. And I'm like, whoa, because they called and the phone number's unknown. And he said, I want to hire you for healing work because I'm also a hypnotist, a consulting hypnotist. And he says, I don't want any records and I'll pay you with cash. And I thought, oh, my goodness, this is weird. He sounded like some big burly guy that's reading a script. And I'm like, well, this is the best they got. But what really got me is this guy asked me, do I work with gay people? And I'm like, what? I mean, I live in Asheville, one of probably the most liberal places on the planet. And so I knew it was a setup. And so I kept my cool and I'm trying not to laugh. And I'm like, this is sad because we're 2 months before the hearing date. And they have nothing on me. The VA attorneys are looking for anything and everything on me. There was nothing. I mean, I just told them, I'm sorry, but I have to keep records. I'm a professional. I pay taxes to the IRS. And I just don't think you and I are a good fit. Best wishes. And I hung up.
Oh, wow. Way to handle that.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, well, the whole time I tell people that, ask for advice. How do you handle bullying or discrimination, harassment, work? I said, there's always going to be a part of you, especially if you're in the military, that, you just really want to knock the crap out of them. I'm just saying this literally. I mean, I've never hit anybody like that. But there's a part of you that just wants to say enough is enough is enough. This is crazy. But you have to keep your cool, because if you lose your cool, that's something they can use on you. So I never lost my cool, ever lost my cool. In fact, that's what upset them so badly is all the times management would pull me in and they would try to rattle me. They would make fake charges. They tried to give me a bad evaluation. And see, I ran the evaluation program, the appraisal program in the Veteran Affairs. And I handled all kind of HR programs. And then I also had worked in employee labor relations in HR at the Veteran Affairs. So, they were really messing with the wrong person. But I do remember one of the top senior managers trying to say, we're going to put you on a performance improvement plan, that I failed my performance plan, what's expected at work. And they were making up false stuff. And see, I had them over a barrel because I'm sitting there quoting the regulation, by heart, because I ran the program. And I'm like, what you're doing is illegal. And I'm going to turn you in, and I'm going to add this to the charges. And he turned red and purple because he was trying to scare me. They were trying to put me on a performance improvement plan, which means in 90 days they could technically legally fire me. And I knew good and well that you can't be judged or evaluated on something that's not on your performance plan in the Veteran Affairs. And it's kind of that way with any government agency. And that's how some bad managers try to get rid of their people. And so that's what I do today as a subject matter expert in workplace bullying and discrimination. A couple of my clients right now, ironically, do work in the Veteran Affairs, and they're having, issues. Now, the Veteran Affairs is not the only place that has issues. I mean, it's even in the private sector. I've helped people in the private sector too. But they show me the different ways that they're being retaliated. Maybe they're getting a bad evaluation. Like what happened to me, they're trying to, management's trying to say that they're failing at work, but they're illegally evaluating them against something that's not already established as a performance plan. So, that's the stuff I can do, with my eyes closed and in my sleep. I mean, I've been doing this for many years.
Can you define whistleblower? Because I'm not sure we actually gave a definition for that, just in case someone doesn't know what a whistleblower is.
Well, I'll just give my definition of whistleblower. A whistleblower is like speaking out against a wrongdoing. Maybe you see some prohibited personnel practices, like the nepotism in the government is illegal, the hiring of family and friends by management, or, one coworker getting training that the other coworker doesn't get, and then the next they have a promotion that says you have to have this training. So I saw these things and I spoke out. So whistleblower is usually someone who's speaking out against wrongdoing in the workplace or illegal activities. I would sum it up that way.
Okay. And what act protects whistleblowers? Do you know the act or the law off the top of your head?
Well, there's really not a straight out act for whistleblowing, but for example, if you file an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint, okay, any kind of discrimination, whether it's age, whether you're LGBT, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, sex, you're 40 or over, disability, pregnancy, there's quite a few. You can go to www.eeoc.gov and you'll see all the different classes, protected classes. And so when you file, whether you are found your discrimination case or your age discrimination case is found valid, just as soon as you file and you're in the system, okay, you're in a protected status. Then if you get retaliation or harassment, then that creates a second case, okay? So that's what protects the whistleblower. Bullying at work is not illegal, okay? But retaliation, harassment, because you filed an EEO complaint, or the other one is like the Office Special Counsel. That's another government agency. That's the prohibited personnel practices. Like, you report nepotism there, training discrepancies, where one's getting and another person's not. And then, there's also other agencies out there too that are similar, but those are the two main ones. Harassment, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has increased in 2016 by 30%. Wow. So what I mean by that, it's unreal. 30%, meaning that the retaliation has increased 30% when somebody files. And that can be very discouraging because for the person who's not an HR person, they are, no matter how strong they are, because I helped a tough Marine who worked in the Veteran Affairs in another state. And I mean, it can bring you down to your knees when you have 10, 15 people after you, trying to destroy you, trying to belittle you, to demean you, to railroad you right out of, your job. And I mean, I've never worked with a client yet that hasn't been absolutely just about humbled and on their knees from the experience. It's very stressful.
Wow. I don't even know if I would have the courage to do that, honestly, because you always hear about, the harassment or the retaliation when somebody speaks up. So I'm just awed over here that you've been able to do that and stick by it. It's amazing.
Well, when I started it, I knew I was in for a big fight. And it's not that I want to be a fighter. Nobody really wants to be a fighter, I don't think. But it's kind of like I had no choice. I could back down and they were going to destroy my career. And, I was watching people get promoted to $90,000 a year jobs, and they had, a GED with no background, no training, no experience or anything, but they were family and friends and they were moving up in promotions. And then I saw other people with master's degrees, or somebody had 20, 30 years of training experience, and they were at the bottom of the promotion pile. And, it makes you sick. You're a veteran and you know about service before self. And so watching all these poor souls that deserved to get a promotion, and they were at the bottom of the pile. And the management, they were so brazen, they didn't even try to hide it. They thought they were untouchable.
Because so many people don't report. So many people don't say anything because they can intimidate them. Or the intimidation works.
Yeah, it will, and it'll wear you down.
Yeah.
It will wear you down. I mean, after 2 years, I just wrote an article the other day because it was my 3 or 4 year anniversary. I'm losing track of time. But I ended up in the mental health ward for a few days. And because I passed out twice at work, long-term stress, even though I wasn't suicidal, I occupied one of the 4 beds of the mental health ward at Asheville in the hospital, the Veteran Affairs Hospital. I remember my psychologist saying, or psychiatrist actually, her saying that, you'll feel safer here and this is a voluntary thing. Do you want to be in the mental health ward? And I kept thinking, I can't go back to this work. I keep passing out, even though I'm a strong person. I mean, geez, I spent 20 years in the Airforce with a bunch of men. And, I learned to be tough, and that's something I truly value. It was very humbling in the mental health ward. I mean, they take away your shoestrings. The food sucks. Oh, my God.
But that was like the only thing to do is to eat, look forward to eating.
Eat and stand in line to get your drugs. I mean,
yeah, and art. Did y'all do art? Because I did art, and that was pretty amazing. I
forgot about the art. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I think I got to color something or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I was so doped up on medicine, I could barely hold a crayon. But I tell people that was my graduation school. That was my graduate school there, because third day I looked in the metal mirror because, obviously they don't have regular mirrors. Mm-hmm. And then I got really myself. I looked at a mirror and, my skin was yellow. Under my eyes was purple. I saw the picture. And I realized the biggest bully was me. And I had that epiphany, and I'm like, well, what's going on is bad. It's bad because they cut my paycheck off and my credit went south. Ended up having to sell a home, a beautiful big home in South Asheville. But those doors closed and actually opened more doors because, I ended up checking out after the interdisciplinary team said, you really are okay. And I said, I told you I'm okay. I just needed a break. And I needed a break from the harassment. So I never physically went back to work after that. I had a year before my hearing date, and I just kept doing the paperwork, writing up my 2 cases. And then the powerful thing is that 2 days before our hearing, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission judge, which in our case was from Charlotte, North Carolina, they're traveling judges. And I didn't know that at the time. They travel. So we're 2 days before the hearing, and I hired an attorney to be my voice box. And so then the VA's all of a sudden not calling me crazy, and they're offering me settlement deals. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. So, I told my attorney I really wanted to go to the hearing because otherwise things get swept under the rug. And most attorneys, if they're offered a settlement, most will go with the settlement because you don't know how things will turn out with the judge. You don't know. And so I put my foot down. I said, okay, I will settle, but I will not sign a gag order to stay quiet. And what blows people away is that I didn't have any witnesses. Well, I had one, but I didn't have to bring her in. And that's my friend who's actually facing, her own hearing date here soon. But no, it was pure documentation. And so I wrote a book. My second book is going to be coming out before long. And it's called Solutions to Workplace Bullying and Discrimination. It's about my story. My first book is about my story with some tips of, overcoming difficult times. But the second book is highly comprehensive. I realized that being the nerd that I am, I started researching and seeing what books are out there to help people that are being bullied and discriminated at work. And I realized there were some out there, but they were very general. They weren't comprehensive. Or they weren't comprehensive enough. And so, I had a lot of people contact me. How'd you do it, Dawn? How'd you do that? How do you settle without a gag order? That's unheard of. And I said, well, when you know what you're doing, and I did. So that book will be out hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months. My editor's working on, the details and editing, and it'll be out soon.
Cool. And you read my mind because I was just about to ask you about your blog post that's entitled, I Had Become My Own Worst Nightmare, Landing in the Mental Health Ward. And I was scanning through it and about to ask you about it. And then you mentioned it, you brought it up. So, and for anybody who wants to read that, it's at Dawn's website at dawnmariewestmoreland.com. And again, it's entitled, I Had Become My Own Worst Nightmare, Landing in the Mental Health Ward. And she even has a picture up there. And it looks like what you just described.
Yeah, that picture was 2 weeks after I came out of the mental health ward. And, if you look at it, you can see that my skin was a mess. And I looked like I came out of the mental health ward. I was trying to smile in the picture. But that was my government badge. And of course, I whited out all the, government information and such. But yeah, I wrote that on my anniversary because, that was actually my mother's birthday. And I remember having to call her from the mental health ward because you're allowed to call. Of course, everybody's listening in. And I'm trying to explain to my mother, I'm in the mental health ward and don't panic. Yeah, but that was graduate school for me. And so I tell people today, sometimes your gifts come in ugly wrapping paper because if I was not bullied and I'd not gone through all this experience, it would have maybe never motivated me to be an entrepreneur, to write 2 books, to be a speaker, now 27 years consulting. And then when I settled 1 week after that with my Airforce benefits or military benefits, I become a life coach. So I take all these skill sets and strictly today, I do, exactly that. I either write, I speak, or I consult. And a very large consulting company right outside of D.C. just hired me to be a government subcontractor.
Congratulations.
We're going to be doing some online courses on behavior and leadership. And they saw my skill sets and they love my story. And, it's funny, I have to share this with you. I had somebody recently mad at me. We just did not get along and we parted ways. And out of anger, they told me this, Ariel, I'm going to put on a website that you spent time in the mental health ward. And I'm like, wait a minute. I think I put that out there 3 or 4 years ago. It's on my front page of my website. So, yeah. You know, people can be drama.
Yes. And you are like, I swear we're like sisters from another mister or something, because even when we first talked, I remember you telling me you read my website and about you also being in the mental ward, because I was there about 3 to 5 days. And how you just like now, how you're talking about that you turn that breakdown into a breakthrough, because that's something I always say, how to turn a breakdown, a bad situation, into a good situation. So even with the experiences you had, they were negative, but you've started a business and you're sharing your story and helping others overcome that. And I absolutely love that. And then also, I always say, when you share, you take away the shame. So if you're telling your own story about the mental health ward and everything, like when you said somebody else says, oh, I'm going to tell somebody that, you're like, I'm telling that already. Everybody already knows I'm crazy. So what's the big deal?
Well, and they know I wasn't crazy when they realized what I went through, you know, and I tell people, you know, the psychiatrist that looked out for me, she said, you've been through a lot and most people could not handle what you've been through. They would have either tried to kill themselves or they would have had a meltdown. And it did affect me. I was very deeply stressed. I was tired. I was single, divorced. I'm going through this all by myself, living all by myself. And most of my family is in another state. And then some of my friends couldn't handle it and they shunned away from me. So it was a lot. It was a lot to take. But you know what? We're so much stronger than we realize. And we have to be careful the thoughts we put in our heads, because the subconscious mind is powerful.
It's so true. So true. And stress has so many detrimental effects on the body, like you were saying. So definitely, and it's nothing wrong with going into a mental institute, a mental ward. If you need to go or see a psychiatrist or a therapist, go. Because when I was in there, it was an eye opener for me as well. Because like you said, no shoestrings, no razors, no, I just got to the point where I didn't even have shoes. I just walked around in socks all day. And then you have no sense of time because we didn't have any clocks around. And all it was getting up, taking meds, doing some art, maybe working out, and talking on the phone, which you fight over a phone because everybody's trying to talk to somebody. But that's it. There's no regular cell phone or computer. So that's when I learned. And I went to the emergency room and ended up in the mental ward. So that's when I learned, like, all the stuff that I normally stress about, like needing to be here with this person or needing to do this or whatever. Once I was in the mental ward, it was like, why was I worried about all of that?
Yeah. And did you always have a mental health professional always 5 feet away from you listening in to all your conversations?
You know, I didn't even notice, but I would say yes, there was always somebody who worked there that was right there, but I really didn't care because I was just like, oh, whatever, I'm taking a break.
Yeah.
It was like a break from life and all the stress because I couldn't worry about anything. I wasn't connected to anyone. So it was just like, well, I'm here. Let me go eat. Let me go lay down, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, it was a good experience. And the fact, like I said, it liberated me because I really did realize the biggest bully in my life was myself for feeling so victimized. I mean, it was rough. I mean, gosh, anytime you lose your career and you have to sell your nice big house you worked many years for and your credit goes south and it takes years to get your health back mentally and physically. But one step forward, you know, each day and just seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, it works. That and faith.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for doing this interview. Thank you for your openness and willingness to share. How can we get in touch with you and find out more about you and the services that you offer?
Well, right now, my website, my new one's being built. But if you go to my name, DawnMarieWestmoreland.com, You can go to the old website, or the current one, I should say, and you can also go to that now, and it'll forward to the new one. The new one should be up in probably in about 10 days to 2 weeks.
All righty. And some of her blog posts, again, I had become my own worst nightmare, landing in the mental health ward, 5 tips to honor MLK, 5 tips before hiring a life coach, Prozac or a life coach, do's and don'ts on social media when you're being bullied at work. I mean, just all kinds of good blog posts and information from Dawn. So if you are feeling as if you're being bullied or discriminated against or harassed in your workplace, definitely contact Dawn so she can help you. And just, it's always important to reach out to people who understand what you're going through, because as I always say, you are not alone.
Yes, you're not alone.
So thank you so much, Dawn.
Oh, you're welcome, Ariel. It's great to hang out with you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Veteran Woman Podcast. If you want to connect with Ariel and let her know what you thought of today's show, be sure to head over to www.theveteranwoman.com and follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @The Veteran Woman.